We welcome to the, what day is today? March 24th, 2025 meeting of the Averill Park School Board. Welcome. If everybody could please stand for the first. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and hand it over to Jim.
I know. All right, so today's Board of Education report. A couple things have happened from the business side of the house. You had our insurance carrier, who's Utica National, inform us that we're looking at a 20% increase, which is about $114,000 from last year. There are two insurance carriers in New York State. We've been told that the other one is also raising the premium, I believe somewhat similarly. And also, we've been talking with Parker. Originally, I told you we're looking at a 1.0 nurse there, and we are going to pay 0.6. They've adjusted their need, so they're looking at a 0.6 need, of which we're going to pay for about 0.4. It's a little bit of a savings there. So give or take about $100,000 increase overall between those two things. On the instructional side, we've worked with the admin team to make a modification to the plan for the library aides. Each of the elementary schools will have an aide assigned for 2 hours per day. They will be assigned clerical tasks, such as like reshelving books, those type of activities. And then we want to talk a little bit about class size and some follow-up. So looking at our class sizes for next year, if we stay with the current model, the consultant model, we would have 10 sections across the elementaries. Again, these are my projections, with 25 or more students. Currently, we have 7. So we'd go from 7 to 10. Under the co-teach model that we shared last meeting, we'd have 3 sections of 25 or more. And one of those would actually have 23 for the majority of the day based on when students will be in and out. And then we also wanted to show the little chart that we put together, map put together. We kind of just pulled class sizes for the last 5 years, 20-year increment, last 20 years at 5-year increments. And again, it's not foolproof, but it kind of gives you a breakdown. I'll give you a chance to just kind of take a look at it. Really, basically, the point here is that if you look at our class sizes, they're relatively consistent over the 20 years. There's some ups, there's some downs, there's some changing. A lot of our numbers are driven by the fact that we have 3 buildings, clearly. So there's only so much we can do in terms of transportation, and we're wanting to keep people in their local schools. So we're limited by that factor. But you can see that the class sizes are relatively consistent. Again, some up, some down. And again, it's the min and max. It's not the only way to look at this. We've looked at it a whole bunch of different ways, but we kind of thought this chart was a nice summary of the data. When you take those sheets and you kind of take them the more detailed look over that time period, if you just kind of mix them up, you wouldn't be able to tell what year is what. They're that consistent across. Some are up, some are down, all dependent. Then we have a lot of information on the EV buses. So I know that's going to be a discussion item tonight, so we wanted to get this information to you. Change to the original quote, kind of focused down here, the chart. Net cost goes up based on some information from our consultants, and including the cost of the charger in the original quote, and kind of figuring out some of that stuff. So Carrie knows obviously much more about this and is in the details. She did confirm that applying for the voucher is non-binding. Also been in contact with our sales rep from Leonard, and there's an impact of the tariffs that they're projecting. They don't have a clear picture of it. They're hoping to get more. They don't have those answers now, but they're kind of telling us to look at about a 10 to 12% above our currently quoted price as an estimate. So trying to factor that in. Carrie's been working with her folks to determine how we write the resolution this year, because usually we try to give you a very solid number. This might be something more in the wording of not to exceed or something like that. So we're still kind of playing around with that in terms of how we could adjust this. Excuse me. The third thing, Carrie's working with state aid planning, which is actually out of our BOCEs. It's a statewide planning group. And this is new information, but with the voucher program, the local cost would actually be zero. And this was new. We did some digging into that again today to verify some things. But essentially it means it's going to be cheaper to purchase than a gas or diesel bus. There'll be no financial impact from a cost point of view. It does not include the charger, but it does include the actual bus cost because of the voucher program that's out there now. And then the last thing we were looking to follow up, I think that was a question, was about the insurance. And you can see the last line, the increase in premium per bus of around $720. So we know that is a discussion item for tonight. Mark Primo is here to partake in that discussion. He obviously knows the transportation situation here better than anyone in terms of the good and the bad and all that stuff with the potential purchase of an electric vehicle. So that is the report of the news and updates, excuse me. And then our celebrations of success video. Again, thanks to Brian Radowitz, who's still doing our videos at this point. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thanks, John. This is the first public. Hey, everyone. This is the first public, you guys, and my apologies for how I sound. I'm screaming like this. Enjoy, screaming like this, enjoy. First public comment period for items on this evening's agenda. If you're wishing to speak to the board this evening, we ask you one of these blue forms. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. This first session is for items on the agenda. We will have a second session for items not on the agenda. Thus far, I think everything I have is for items ostensibly on the agenda, it will connect it to the budget, so we'll just start with Rebecca Ekstrom.
Members of the board, administrators, and students, I appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight. I am here to speak to you as a librarian from Algonquin, but also a community member. I am here to advocate for the continuation of the elementary school library aide positions. The district is proposing that each elementary library have 2 hours of aide time, but this was stipulated that this time is for clerical tasks, not for assisting students. I realize we have significant budgetary constraints. However, it cannot be discounted that our elementary library aides have a significant impact on the education of our students. Every day, library aides do the critical work of assisting our youngest learners. Our library aides help to foster a love of reading and provide individual and specialized assistance to students. They manage the library and its thousands of resources so that it is a positive educational space for all. What library aides do is much greater than repairing and shelving books. They help students find the book that is just right. They guide students through their academic work. They create a place that is warm and welcoming to each and every student and many other tasks. An elementary school library that is not fully staffed is incomplete. Picture a school library where the circulation desk is empty. Picture a school library where our smallest pupils are left on their own in the stacks to find what they need. Picture a school library where the phone rings, but no one is there to answer the call. Picture a school library where the students no longer have the opportunities they once had. I urge you to reconsider this decision and prioritize the support that our students deserve. Thank you.
Brittany Carrier.
First of all, thanks for doing this early because I was just going to be nervous the whole time, so I can get it out of the way. So good evening. I am speaking tonight on behalf of the current kindergarten class in West Sand Lake. As a bit of background, my daughter, now in second grade at West Sand Lake, had a wonderful kindergarten experience. She thoroughly enjoyed her class and her teacher, which I will mention is the same teacher that my son currently has. The class had 17 students and allowed for a nurturing learning environment, which I believe we can all agree is essential for our youngest set of students. Now let's talk about this year. My son entered kindergarten this past fall, and we were so excited for him to have the same wonderful experience as his sister. On the very first day of orientation, we were told that the classrooms had been reduced to 2 rather than the normal 3 classrooms. To be honest, I didn't think twice about this. I knew the teacher was great and figured my son would be just as supported as my daughter was. But boy, was I wrong. In only a few short weeks, I started seeing behaviors in my son that I had never seen. Mind you, he had been in a daycare setting since he was 5 months old, plus a year at the St. Jude Pre-K. So I knew that he was well equipped to handle kindergarten and the social aspects that come with the classroom. So the new behavior I was seeing was a surprise. I was getting notices from the school regarding his behavior, and I just didn't understand what was happening to my son. Then one day, he randomly used some very disturbing language that I will not repeat tonight, but it was not something he had learned at home. It's not language we use. I soon found out that he was learning this language from some of his classmates. And of course, he didn't understand it, but he chose to copy it. He was also rolling his eyes at me, dismissing me with a shoulder shrug, and so on. So I spoke to several other parents who also had the same experiences. I soon found out that the classroom was out of control. With 23 students in the class this year, so 6 more than what my daughter had, and these are 5-year-olds. They're 5-year-olds. There was disruptive behavioral issues, and my son was not learning. There have been at least 5 classroom evacuations, and this was not just at the start of the school year, they continue to happen. The problem persists, and we're 7 months into the school year. Keeping 2 classrooms for these students next year will change nothing, in my humble opinion. I fear that my son will now be in first grade with the same problems. Now, I have been in the classroom for class parties, Halloween being the first one, and the size of the class is so large that the students don't even have enough room to comfortably sit on the carpet during certain periods of instruction. They must sit crisscross applesauce, you know, the language, in their tiny square, and they cannot lean back, they can't stretch, they can't move at all. These are 5-year-olds we're talking about. My son doesn't even sit still when we're eating dinner. Developmentally, these kids are not able to and should not be expected to sit still on the carpet for 20 to 30-minute lesson with no movement. We are not supporting our children properly. Rather, they are being scolded for not doing something that they are not developmentally ready to do. Is this okay? Do you feel good about this? Because I don't. My son told me that he does not like school, which is truly defeating. Kindergarten should be about learning to love learning and creating bonds with peers. Instead, my son is afraid he'll get in trouble for doing anything. The teacher must control the classroom so tightly in order to not lose complete control of the students that there is no silliness, creativity, or honestly, children being children. The first few years of schooling is crucial to our students as it lays the foundation for their academic, social, and emotional development. Supporting our students during these early years will not only benefit the student, but also the school district, as our students will flourish and the academic achievements greatly improved. I am asking the school board to rethink the decision to keep only 2 classrooms for the incoming first graders at West Sand Lake. You know that there are problems that could be resolved with less students in the class. Teachers are so important to our children. They shape the future by educating and inspiring students, but they cannot do that if they are overloaded due to class size. They will burn out and we will lose some amazing teachers in the process. This is not the kind of reduction through attrition the district should be aiming to achieve. Thank you.
Jared Parker.
Good evening. Similar topic. It was asked in a recent prior meeting, rather honestly and insightfully, I think, if we're not mandated to hold a particular policy, well, why should we have that? Per the New York State School Boards Association, quote, policies are school board's single most important function. Establishing policy is a form of empathy for your future self. You adopt or amend or repeal policy as a statement of values, a declaration of ideals, and or a prescription to action. Policy is a user guide to help inform future choices. When this body declares a position in policy or prescribes a particular course of action, it's not always a guidepost for everyday action or necessarily a plan for ideal times. Sometimes policies are there as a backup, not like emergency lighting when the power fails. Now, this body has declared previously and most recently reaffirmed in 2022 a prioritization schedule for how to deploy resources when they become limited. Since we're cutting program this year, it seems that resources have become limited. The backup lights are on. When you're faced with difficult choices, the first thing you have to do is confront the reality of the situation. If you can't provide everyone with what they deserve or what they need, how do you proceed? You can't simply proceed based entirely and exclusively on an assessment of your tangible resources alone. Success may not follow. You have to also rely on the wisdom, your lessons from hardships past, and the values gleaned from those lessons. The policies adopted based on these realized values. This body in a past iteration worked through a trial, reflected on those lessons learned, and thought it important enough, significant enough, imperative enough to provide as a kindness to its future self a policy on the matter. Board Policy 4420, quote, if a budgetary constraints or enrollment growth prevent the district from achieving the class size guidelines, efforts will be made to meet the guidelines in the following priority order. Grade K, Grade 1, Grade 2, Grade 3, Grade 4, Grade 5. While a central component of this planning discussion is our inability to meet the elementary class size guidelines. The proposal improves teacher-to-student ratio, which is a pretty adequate, I guess, corollary for class size. And in some of the grades, the elementary levels ratios do improve, namely 2nd through 5th. It creates an 11-to-1 5th grade, several 12-to-1 4th grades, a 14-to-1 4th grade, and an average 3rd grade ratio of 18-to-1 overall. But our rising first graders, 22-1. At West Sand Lake, overall 21-1. With the current budgetary constraints, does it sound as though the district is making effort to meet the guidelines in the following priority order? Grade kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5. Thanks.
Emily Ross.
Hi, I'm here as a parent of 3 kids in the school district. So I have 1 in middle school and 2 in elementary. And just coincidentally this year, my 2 younger kids happened to end up in the largest classroom sizes that were shown earlier. So my first grader is in a classroom with 25 kids, and my 4th grader is in a classroom with 27 kids. Going into the school year, I was worried about how it would go, and unfortunately, it has gone about as expected, with it being fairly chaotic. Our teachers are amazing at Miller Hill Sand Lake, and I feel like this year they are managing to keep up with the chaos, but expecting them to do this year after year with these large classroom sizes is just going to lead to our amazing teachers burning out. And we're going to be losing the teachers that make our district so great, because it is what makes our district great, is the teachers and the staff that show up every day and work with our kids and prioritize them and see them and make sure that they're getting their needs met. But in a classroom of 27 kids, how can you be sure, like how can anyone be sure that all the kids in that classroom are getting what they need in order to succeed during the school day? I feel like it's great that, you know, the teachers are trying their best, but we need to just be mindful of the fact that kids are going to get lost, things are going to get missed, and it's just going to become a bigger and bigger problem with each year that these kids are going to be in these large classroom sizes. It's also going to create a standard of education that differs across the district. So one classroom is going to have a 14-to-1 ratio, and one's going to have a 25-to-1, and those kids are going to be in the same school, but they're not going to be receiving the same education. And I think that's something that needs to be discussed and reconsidered. Co-taught is a fantastic model of education for kids. It benefits kids that are neurodivergent, but also all kids in the classroom, but it needs to be applied universally in order to be successful. Otherwise, the kids are not going to be receiving the same level of education across the district. Thank you.
Thanks. Kara, again, not Kara, I'm going to carry your last name.
Tabella.
Tabella.
Married into that name.
Kara, say it again.
Tabella.
Tabella.
You're welcome. So I wanted to come here and tell a story. My best friend now from school, I say my school friend right here, Brittany, she and I have been able to have both of our kids almost in every class together, which is phenomenal. So same story, we started kindergarten together. My beautiful girl and her beautiful girl together. Was a fun and exciting new thing. We came from a school district that had nothing available to us. And coming here, I bragged all the time about how cool and exciting the school district was, especially since I have my first kiddo. My oldest, who's in 2nd grade, has autism and ADHD. So we have had so much support with the special education program. Super lucky, was super excited, and even is ecstatic to bring my next daughter up, who is neurotypical kiddo. And we walked in high-fiving our teachers. We love them to death. And I watched my fantastic, fantastic teacher struggle. And you could see her just, honestly, I took time off from work to be able to assist her classroom. I was able to come give my teacher a coffee and just be another person in the classroom. I am a nurse. I'm a registered nurse who works at home, so I have this ability once in a while to be able to share my my body with another adult in the room. And I've watched her fantastically try to manage 20 plus kiddos. I know that I would never switch places with her. My 2 kids versus the 20, 23, 25 to try to teach has been astounding for her. I don't want her to burn out. We burn out in the hospital all the time. I can't see this. I could see this going in that direction in the future, losing these really fantastic teachers to just, if we're having chaos every day, if your adrenaline is so high all the time, it just will become to a point where you can't do it anymore. And you never want to see these guys do that, especially because they come here just to make sure our kiddos are great. Teachers' aides, we've had them. I've had them in my kindergarten class the first year of my oldest. We so far don't need one at this point, but it always teeters on a teacher's aide to find out that co-teaching, that'd be great. But if we're running to the point where first grade won't have any support, any aides or co-teaching, we're running into a situation, once again, like we were talking about kindergarten going into first. I know that's what my kids love to read and started my first one. I would love to continue with that. So I just, I feel grateful I'm able to come here tonight. It's my first meeting. I've been seeing all my information online, so I'm glad to be here to hear it firsthand. And I'm always said I'm here to support my school and my teachers. So if I can do that same here as well. So I appreciate you guys listening to my story and how awesome my kids are and my teachers are. And I hope I can continue to be so.
Thanks so much, Sharon. That is all the sheets I have for right now. Again, we will have another public comment session later on for items not on the agenda. We'll get through the rest of the agenda. So I just need a motion, and again, thank you guys for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. And something if we don't have kind of wherewithal to respond right now, but any follow-up that needs to happen. So, okay, now I need a motion to approve. Justy is like right. Justy motions to approve the minutes from the March 10, 2025 meeting, and Peggy seconds. Any discussion on the minutes from the March 10 meeting? Okay, hearing no discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes as written? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. That's 6, 7, and 8. That's business and personnel. And special education, Megan first. Adam second. Discussion on the consent agenda. Jess.
I wanted to take a moment to thank Hannaford Helps for their donation towards the high school. We appreciate that. And then I also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge a retirement of Robin Puglisi and thank her for her 20 years of service to the district and wish her well in her retirement.
Any other comments?
Jesus.
Sorry, I should lay out the snacks. Hearing no further discussion on the consent agenda. All those in favor of adopting said consent agenda? Okay, that is unanimous. Nobody against, abstentions. Action items. I'm looking this as quick as possible. I need a motion to approve the agreement by between Averill Park Central School District and Vander Hayden for the implementation. Adam first, Megan second. Commentary, Megan?
Just a quick question. Do we have to do these action items individually by rule, or can I make a motion to approve items 9A through E? Is that allowed?
Yes, you can.
I would like to make a motion to approve action items 9A through E.
Okay, I just need a second, and Adam seconds approving action items. Okay. Discussion on action items 9A through 9E. Okay. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving all the action items, once that is unanimous. Item 10, we have 2 resolutions. I need a motion to approve the secret resolution involving upgrades and renovations of existing facilities at Algonquin Middle School consisting of window replacement in the music room, installation of acoustic dampening panels in the cafeteria, and installation of carpet in the music room and the refrigerator. Jess T first, Megan seconds, discussion.
Michelle and I serve on the facilities committee, and I am always impressed with the team that we have and the ability for us to do so much with so little. And just always appreciative for Tony and the rest of the facilities committee for what they do, because we gotta stretch the buck, so I appreciate it.
Good job. All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the secret resolution? That is unanimous. I need a motion to approve participation in conjunction with our Regional Information Center, the RIC Risk Operations Center, for the purposes of improving vendor management and data security and privacy practices. Adam first, Megan seconds, discussion. I only would echo what Megan said about our grant facilities on the tech side for this, because reading what this is all about is, I'm glad it's somebody other than me. It scares the pants off of me. Okay, hearing no other discussion. All those in favor of approving this resolution? Okay, that's unanimous, guys. All right, budget discussion. This is open the floor to board members to discuss all the information that we digested over the last, I don't even know how long it's been, 10 years? 11. I tend to go last. Who wants to? Adam, would you like to? Go ahead. Oh, Jess, I love Adam and then Jess. Did somebody have a question?
I was just looking up my questions, but no, I'm good.
Okay.
I can wait. No,
Adam, then let me know. I'll write it down.
So I have some notes because I've spent hours and hours going over this budget. First, I want to talk a little bit about budgets in general. Budget is just a plan for how you think you're going to manage your income and expenses over some period of time. And things rarely go exactly as you planned, especially with budgets. There are surprises. Your expenses could be higher or lower, and your income could change for some unforeseen reason. So when you make a budget, you want to be a little conservative. You want to slightly overestimate your expenses, and again, slightly underestimate your income. A little bit of cushion, so that when those surprises happen, you don't find yourself out of money and having to pay someone interest because you need to borrow. For example, after we submitted last year's budget, we ended up getting no increase to our foundation aid from the state. And that year, the 12 months that ended in December of 2023, inflation was 3.4%. In order to avoid making huge cuts last year, we budgeted to use some money from our reserves if we needed it. Now, I'll talk a little bit about reserves. Reserves are savings that we keep for a rainy day. They can be put in special accounts where their use is restricted to a specific purpose, or they can be left in our unassigned fund, which can be used for anything. It's really good financial management to keep some money in your reserves. Several summers ago, you probably remember when we had a huge flood that caused tons of damage to our buildings. We needed to get these repairs done quickly so that school could open in September as planned. So we used some of our reserves to pay for the repairs and eventually got some level of reimbursement from our insurance companies and from the state. Because we had reserves, we didn't have to borrow money and pay interest, and we could move quickly. So it's good to have reserves for literally a rainy day. All right, back to last year's budget. Remember, inflation was at almost 3.5%, and the state gave us no increase to offset the fact that our costs were going up around 3.5% across the board. So in order to not have to cut a lot more staff and programs, we decided to use about $2.6 million from our reserves when we made the budget. Now, budgeting to dip into your savings is a risky thing Because if you have to dip in there, it's not sustainable. You can't keep doing it because your savings eventually run out. As I said though, coming back full circle, a budget is just a plan, and we managed our spending really carefully so that our expenses were lower than planned. We also were able to take our reserves and invest them wisely, very conservatively, but wisely, which gave us some unplanned income from the interest we made. If you have savings, you can invest it and make money for nothing. Because of this interest and our cost savings, we ended up not having to use any of that $2.6 million from our reserves, which is fantastic. Since that was in the budget last year, that 2.6 million earmarked to use if we need it, we're going to keep it again this year. And it's a little risky, but again, we hope to find other revenues or cost savings as the year goes on so that we don't actually have to spend this money. But if we do, it's already been budgeted, so it's there if we need it. We're doing this because our costs keep going up. Our biggest increase this year is health insurance, which between health coverage and prescriptions increased by over $1.2 million this year. Other benefits and salaries also increased together, separate from just the 1.2, by another $1 million. In fact, here's a good one, to just offer everything we're offering now to stay in place, not cut any staff, not cut any programs, it will cost an additional $4.5 million more than it did last year. So that's a number to remember. $4.5 million is the additional cost of just staying in place. Now, I'll talk about income. Our district gets nearly all of its income from local property taxes and from the state. It's about 50-50. It's more property taxes than state aid. The main source of state aid is called foundation aid, but we also get reimbursed for capital projects and other things that we purchased in the past, like buses. I'm going to talk a lot more about state aid during my board report, so I'm not going to do it here because I'll really get wound up. We won't know for sure how much the state will give us until the state budget is passed. Now, it's supposed to be passed by April 1st. It wasn't passed that way last year, and we got a surprise last year. But the last projection that we got said that we could expect an increase of around $1.8 million in our foundation aid from the state. And now, if we raise property taxes as much as we can without requiring a supermajority to approve, that increase will be about $870,000. So those are our two biggest sources of revenue. There are some other small sources of revenue that we get, and we expect they'll increase by about $300,000. So if you add all of our increases in income together, our increase is about $2.9 million. So that's the other important number, right? That's how much our income's going up. So we have $4.5 million in cost increases, but we only have $2.9 million in additional income. And if you do the math, you see this leaves us in a hole that's about $1.6 million deep. So there are two ways. There are only two ways that we have that we can fill that hole. We could either raise property taxes even higher, or we could make cuts. We would have to raise property taxes by 6.8% to fill that hole, and that would require a 60% supermajority of the voters to approve it. But they never would, and I can't blame them. It's too much to ask. So we're forced to make cuts to make up this difference. It takes a lot to fill a $1.6 million hole. First, we're not backfilling 2 teachers and 2 aides that have decided to leave us. We also have 10 teachers who are retiring, and we will be backfilling them, but with teachers that don't have as much experience, so they cost less, and that saves us money. We're not backfilling one of our technology administrators who has left us. We also found a few ways to save money in some other places, like legal expenses, BOCES utilization, smallish stuff, but it all adds up. And we're going to start charging people to use our buildings on the weekends because we have to pay for a custodian to be there. The taxpayers, in the form of the school budget, used to have to pay for this, but now we'll ask the people using the building to cover this expense, which seems pretty fair. And lastly, and most unfortunately, we're going to need to say goodbye to 6 aides. We're pretty confident that our move to implement co-teaching will ease a lot of the burden that this might otherwise cause. But it's still awful when you need to lay off people who are doing a fine job. All of this combined gets us to that $1.6 million in savings that we need to balance our budget. Just like in prior years, this is a tough choice between 2 uncomfortable options, to put it politely. We can either raise taxes or we can cut staff. In my board report, I'll talk a lot more about this situation, so I encourage you all to stay around because you can help. But given the choices that we have, I think this budget is a good compromise that balances impact to our taxpayers with impact to our kids. So I'm in favor of this budget, and I thank Jim, Carrie, and Matt, and everyone else who probably invested a lot of really frustrating hours, probably involving shouting and things like that, to find this path forward to us in this tough economic environment. That's my comments.
Thanks.
Well, we can't top what Adam just said, because I do thank you for putting that time and effort into your summary and with all the numbers, because I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it is a great balance between everything that you discussed, and I also support the budget and thank everyone for their time and effort into it. Appreciate your summary.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam. When Sam and I first got on board, I spent a lot of time kind of diving in. Budgets were not my strong suit. I work in risk management and insurance, so I can attest that what we're getting on the health insurance increase and the property and casualty increase from Utica is standard with the industry as it goes, and there really isn't much we can do about that because we don't have any control over that. But when I first joined the board, I spent a lot of time kind of down the rabbit hole trying to kind of understand how all of this works. And over the past several years have tried to work to raise awareness to the detriment that rural and suburban districts like us face with the foundation aid model. This year, we're finally seeing movement in the right direction as far as that's concerned, but it has taken years and years of advocacy and beating the drum. I want to thank Dr. Francini for adding in the historical data related over the class sizes in his superintendent's report, because I think it should be noted that the state has justified their continued reduction in our aid based on reduced enrollment. So I find it extremely interesting that they would highlight reduced enrollment for the reduction in aid. And if you look at the numbers year over year, our enrollment is largely static or increasing for classes. That coupled with the fact that we have a very strong special education program that serves a lot of our students, and the cost of implementing special education services is going up exponentially. We don't want to reduce the services that we provide to those kids. They deserve everything. All of our students deserve everything. That's why it's every student every day. Every single one of us takes that extremely seriously. I know it gets thrown in our face a lot, but it is a legitimate thing that we all embody and we do the work for it. I continue to be frustrated with the state because they are derelict in their duty. And all we can do is continue to go and be in their space and demand and hold them accountable. But that doesn't help us with the awful choices that we continue to have to make to try and balance the needs of the district with the financial constraints of the community. I know there are, for folks who don't know, we span 9 towns, 103 square miles. There's a lot of folks that are impacted by this, and some of the folks that are impacted by this are facing down other town issues like massive assessment increases, and probably panicking about the amount of taxes that they're gonna have to write checks for. None of that is lost on us. And I may have more to say, but that's where I'm at right now.
Anybody else before Jess, Steve? Comments, questions? Jess, do you want to, I've got a few, or that includes our students, our student representatives. If you
Absolutely.
want to weigh in, or if you don't want to weigh in, no pressure.
I appreciate all the numbers that you brought in. I think that was very eye-opening. I didn't realize there was such like a deficit, I guess I would say. So I think you guys are doing a great job of balancing that and while providing the opportunity.
So I apologize because I feel like I'm still collecting my thoughts about a lot of things, but I just wanted to reiterate, I guess, other points that that while I am in support of this budget, I want to make sure that there's an understanding that there's a distinction between supporting the budget and feeling good about every single hard decision that needs to be made. That I don't think any of us would argue against wanting class sizes to be, reasonable, that against wanting library programs to be robust. I absolutely love the library. There's just so many choices or things that I would make, and I think all of us would make in a more ideal situation. So I want to ensure that I'm speaking to the distinction between supporting this budget versus saying that that we don't understand the concerns of parents or that we're happy about every hard decision that is having to be made here. But more so, I support the budget because I feel good faith in our teams, that I know that our teachers are doing the best that they can. As you all have expressed, that makes me so happy that we have a community that supports education, supports kids, supports teachers, supports admin. So when I feel a sense of support for this budget is because I have been, my involvement even thus far has given me good faith that everybody has worked really hard to cut the least amount as possible, to be as fair as possible, to think about every angle, every impact, and how we can buffer that. So I just wanted to make sure that that was expressed here, that it comes not from a place of thinking that there are no losses happening or no hardships that happened through this process, and for previous year's budgets as well, but just that it comes from a place of good faith in our school district, which is quite honestly the reason I moved to this district as well, because my work with the district through my profession just gave me a lot of faith in the people here, and I continue to have that faith. So yeah, that's all I want to say about the budget. There's lots of it I don't like. There's lots in terms of the broader picture, in terms of what we're being asked to do with the money we have. Lots of worries about other potential contributions or things happening in the world and what will that mean. But I think our administrative staff, and I think, the New York State School Board Association has done a really good job of saying, let's look at the information we have, what we have now, and do our best with what we have now. So that's it. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks. Trustee, I'll go to you.
Well, it's still discussion, right?
It is still
Keep going around, okay. Say, I have a tendency to say something and then somebody else has a good idea and then I really want to add to that. So I need to reserve a minute, just in case.
Absolutely, we can come back to you anytime.
Thank you, I feel heard. I think that there was a lot of information last meeting. A lot of effort that went into, I just am looking, because I feel like, because we were just here 2 weeks ago looking up at the presentation. I think I appreciate and agree with what Adam and Lauren say, not that I disagree with you, Megan, just that I agree, I don't love that we're cutting, not cutting teachers, that we're cutting positions and that we have to do kind of bigger class sizes and that we're left with this budget that requires our admin staff to pour over and make the best decisions they can with what we have, as opposed to, districts that maybe got a lot of money in the last year or two and probably could have made different decisions than we're up against now. I just had one thing I kind of wanted to understand, and it's more just about my lack of knowledge about how it works. So with the co-teaching, I think a lot of those classes were on the bigger end. So my question really is, has co-teaching been done in classes that large? Like, is that, I think 28, 27, is that a common number and has it been successful? And I only care about it here because part of the budget is what the effects of the budget, I should say, is what the class size is gonna look like. So most of the larger classes, we're gonna have the co-teach model. So I guess that's my first question.
So obviously not here, but in terms of experience with it, but Sarah, who you met last meeting, has both as an administrator and a teacher taught the co-taught model with that many students. That's actually one of the first things we talked about. And she told us the story of starting, I think it was with 26 or 27, getting a pair of twins the first day adding to the class. Very successful, largely built on the strong partnership she had with her teacher or fellow teacher. In terms of structure, I mean, I think there's, she and I talked about like ways that you approach instruction, and I think it could look different every single day. There's times where you'll probably see two adults up front and they'll both be teaching the whole class together. There's times where they'll split them in two and they'll be doing kind of parallel teaching. There could be times where they're doing station and one teacher's working with 5 or 6 kids, the other teacher's got 5 or 6 kids, there's another group doing independent work, another group doing group work. And I think it will vary depending on the content, the comfort level of the teacher. She's talked about essentially 6 different approaches you can take with a co-teaching model, and that's all part of the PD that she's planning to do this year with the teams. So that would be absolutely something that all the teams will take part in and helping them get prepared for it. But there's a lot you can do throughout the course of the day. So it could look very, very different from the morning to the afternoon.
Mm-hmm. That's so helpful. Thank you. Just trying to read the rest of my questions here. I don't love a class of 25 in a non-co-teach room. I mean, you guys all know that because I asked it 2 weeks ago, but for the general discussion, oh, sorry, I don't know why I'm getting more intimate here now. Sorry. I speak often about concerns about literacy in general. Not anything wrong with the district, just kind of, well, as a state and as a nation, we're struggling with literacy. So I wonder what, if any, effect it's going to have on that. That being said, I think that our teachers are the best possible people to do it. I think they've done it in the past, which is what we've seen in the PowerPoints today. I have faith in them. And I have faith in our admin that this is the best decision that we can make right now for the district. So while I hope that we get an influx of money, and our problem next year will be how do we spend it all to the benefit of the kids. I understand where we are right now, and I look forward to seeing, what we can do with it this year.
We got a lot of information last meeting. We appreciate all the work that everyone has done in going into what is not an ideal situation. We try, we fight for money, we go to the Capitol, we have an advocacy committee that I think most districts probably do not have. I feel like we have a solid team all the way around. Both of my children are in elementary right now, and so I definitely feel the impact that you guys do as well. With that being said, I do think that the district handles it to the best of their ability, given the cards that we have. It's not ideal. I don't necessarily like it. But with that being said, I think they do a great job in trying to make lemonade out of lemons. It's not a great spot to be in, but we haven't quit the fight. Adam's going to elaborate more on that. I have a feeling in his board report. I do appreciate you guys adding back some aid help to the elementary. That is the kind of thoughtfulness that our admin team has. We voice concerns, we voice things, and although we might not get everything that we want, that's life, right? They are making an effort, and I think that needs to be applauded, not reprimanded. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for tolerating our questions and answering. So just know that we do care. We're all here for the right reasons, and it's not fun to have another deficit year for anybody, but we appreciate it.
And I echo the sentiments of everyone with my appreciation. I do have a question, and I almost hate to ask it, but with some of the policy changes happening at the federal level, do we have concerns, or are there gray areas of concern about changes that are happening at the federal level and how that could potentially impact us? Because I try not to be scared, but just as a special education parent, I'm a little concerned, so just curious.
Yeah, and certainly chime in. I don't think we are overly concerned at this point. The main thing that the federal government provides is funding, and the indication we've gotten that the funding stream is still going to continue. So from that end, I wouldn't say we're overly concerned. I would think or hope the state would fill in some of the gaps that may end up happening if there are any. But I think at this point, I wouldn't say we're concerned. But I matter Carrie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what we've been hearing so far is that the grants will continue, the title grants will continue, the IDA grants will continue. I think what we've heard the most rumbling about is on the free reduced lunch, that being maybe something that's more the forefront that we're hearing, but as far as the title grants and IDA right now, what we're hearing is they're not gonna be affected.
Well, that's good.
You don't get that too often. If you guys are good, I've got kind of one question, just a couple of points. This might be like nitpicking, but Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, that Utica National gives us like a scorecard, correct? Where they rate kind of how well you do in, a number of different factors. And we always get like really high scores on it, right? Right?
Yeah.
I remember that, right? Okay.
Yeah, so for our health and safety, yeah, so really what's going on with Utica is that they're right now, their loss ratio is high, right? So, and the reinsurance market is not great, and they're having some high claims, which is then affecting everybody based on just how they're doing in general, and just how the insurance market is in general. So while we're, a part of that, it's not just simply a reflection of us, it's really across the board that they're doing these increases, but that's kind of, high level as kind of what's going on. It's not that we're not doing anything wrong, it's just the way that the market is right now.
And so it's not like, like my Allstate where like if I don't run red lights, like I get a discount and then.
No, to your point, I think what you're referring to is they give out an award every year. We've got the highest level, platinum level.
Yeah.
For the last 100 years or something. We have all the plaques. So it's nothing that we did or didn't do.
You would think that that might come in some sort of something. Yeah. Okay. No. Okay. I understand. I can explain. No, that was a really good, actually, that was a really good. We are but a cog in greater music. Thank you. But I mean, I think it's just worth pointing out that, again, like $113,000 on the scale of 69 million doesn't seem like much, but that's a teacher and benefits, which I'm just gonna go over to benefits. When I went back and looked at the slides, benefits are like 30%, right? Is that 29%? And again, that's something over which we have no control. We don't get to kind of pick and choose, which, as somebody who's, again, also like these guys, I'm in this budget is very hard when you have all these factors and there's just nothing you can do about it. It is beyond frustrating, when it's like a market, but it's not a market. And that's, that external pressure up to the tune of 30% is, I think galling is the word that kind of peaks up. So like 113 for Utica National was like the icing on the cake. I also just added, something you said reminded me, and Jim, again, correct me if I'm wrong, that almost like 20 years ago, the state contributed more than local taxes, right? It was around 03, 04 that the state contribution went like this, and the local, we started asking more of our taxpayers, and it's just gone up and conversely gone down since then. So that's sort of like my modern dance. And so we're having this conversation in the context of this like greater trend, and we sort of not get bogged down in the details, because the details are really important. That's how we managed to keep we thought we were gonna lose a bunch of AIS teachers. We did. We had to sit here and approve budgets that reduced AIS staff like a year out of the pandemic when kids were still, and they still are. A lot of what we're seeing is still from COVID. And so that, you guys really, are putting out these fires, and there's this greater trend of really that's the state sort of being like, you guys take care of it. And the one thing that I will.
To your point, Sam, I just brought up the graph, but it's not updated, but it was 2010.
2010.
So up until then, state aid made up a higher percentage than our levy.
Okay.
And then at 10, 11, it was pretty much exactly even, and then starting at 11, 12, that's when the local taxpayer started picking up a higher percentage.
Yeah. And, I will say, and again, this was something, Michelle, you talked about the advocacy. I will say, a year and a half ago, I did not expect, we went down, we spoke to our representatives, we spoke to representatives who weren't our representatives. They weren't super friendly when I did that, but I talked to them anyway. But it was not something that I thought would get traction. I don't think it was because of us necessarily, but I think that the Rockefeller study and the extent to which a cohesive message was given by our district and districts in Long Island and Central New York and the North Country, really everybody was speaking the same language and hitting on the same bullet points. And then to come and see the formula, still flawed as it is, at least be able to start getting more granular about districts like ours that have this really big fluctuation in income levels and property ownership that wasn't able to get captured before. was a little gratifying, and part of the reason I think that $1.6 million gap isn't a $3.6 million gap, right? What could have been, was kind of terrifying, and I remember just last year, asking how long can we dip into our reserves, like this is, and there was like this wall of like 2028, 2029, and my kids are here through, I don't know, 2029 and 2032, right? So it was a very scary wall, and hopefully we're pushing that wall out. And actually, that's what I just want to say. We've had these decisions kind of saying no, cutting things every year. It's very frustrating. I do stand behind this budget because there's progress. There's a bunch of things that I've been dealing with in other areas of what I'm working on in my life, where you think something's going to take 6 months, a year, and it takes 2 years. And the extent to which you guys, as an admin, APT, everybody working together to figure out how to make it work with what we've got and getting creative, is that this progress is like, it's slow and it's a little bit by a little bit, but what I've learned in certainly other areas, is you keep getting there. I have another project that I was working on that's been like 2.5 years to get to a point where we thought would be a year ago. And, it takes time, but I appreciate the fact that in this budget, as in last year's, but Carrie's really good about giving us kind of multi-year outlooks. And so the fact that the eye is on the ball is not completely formed, but there is progress. It's not perfect. It's not all the way there. It probably will never be all the way there. But it's making do with what we have, and then ideally increasing what we have. And hopefully this 6 point whatever it was, 6.8, 6 point whatever was our increase from what they did at the foundation aid. Hopefully that's not an outlier. Hopefully they're trending in the right direction at the state level. So that is all I had to say. So again, thank you guys. And Lauren, did you have your hand?
Yeah, I have another comment too that other people's comments made me think of, which is as like I'm the newest board member. This is my first budget season to go through, and I was terrified because I know what cuts have been made the past couple of years. So I will say last meeting too, I was like, oh, like even just 1.6 million, I'm like, that's a lot of money, yikes. But then hearing the presentation, I was like, oh, okay. I was prepared to see worse. I am excited about the co-teaching model. I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of educators in my personal and professional life, so I know that the co-taught model is in a lot of districts statewide and has been around for quite some time. And I wanted to say too that I was excited about the prospect of more teachers in general, but especially special education teachers, because I think the only comparison I can think to make in the mental health field is like, I know that even when the front staff is trained in trauma-informed care, that helps everybody because we don't know who has trauma, right? So if we treat everybody like they do or they might, we see better outcomes. So I think of special education the same way, that and I felt like that was important to say because I do hear people's worries about, well, it's great to have these extra supports. What does that mean for our sort of like general education kids or kids that don't need those supports? But I also think that special education, more special education staff or informed staff in the room helps everybody, including people that might not be identified, students that might not be identified but that are struggling. And so I feel good faith that will help kids that are identified as needing that help and the kids that aren't identified. And that, I think, as I said last time, of that notion that rising tide will raise all ships kind of piece. So I am excited about that we can move forward with that even despite a difficult budget. So that was another comment.
Okay, we also have, that's going to be on the ballot in some form or another, is our bus proposition. I just, so we'll open that up for discussion, and I just want to start with the extent to which I appreciate that we are on a cycle. I think I was just reading something about a district who got off a cycle, or maybe they didn't pay attention to getting on a cycle that is replenishing their buses, and it was a very steep cliff. So, Jim, did you want to?
Yeah, so just to set up, so what we're looking for tonight is guidance from the board. There's essentially two questions that we have to try and start to narrow down. Question one would be, do you want to put some form of electric vehicle on the proposition, on the ballot? And then if the answer to that is yes, then do you want to include that in the regular bus proposition? So you have essentially, if no, obviously, then it's no. If it's yes, you already have the budget vote, you already have the school board member vote, and you already have the bus proposition vote. You can split that and do, I'm just making this up, say you wanted to buy 3 gas buses and have that be a separate proposition, and then have the electric vehicle, if you choose to do one, be a separate one, so they're not tied together. That is an option. Again, you could go with no electric vehicle, you can combine them into one, or you could separate them. In this district, we did that fairly recently. If you go back a couple capital projects ago, we had a kind of a choice A, which was all the, we'll call it the requirements, the necessities. And then we had a second one that involves some other stuff, more of the wants versus needs, the turf fields and that one. And that was set up very clearly that the public could vote for yes and yes, or yes and no, or no and no, whatever they wanted. But B did not get approved if A did. Right, so that was set up very clearly so that you could get the wants and not the needs. In the end, the public voted both of those down. And then we did the next 2 projects that thankfully have passed. So that's just kind of, again, what we're looking for tonight as we go to build towards a resolution at the next meeting. Yes or no on electric vehicles, and then if yes, separate proposition or combined with the regular one.
I'm not sure I understand the options you just presented. I'm sorry if I'm.
We can, why don't you start with question
what?
1?
Let's start with question 1.
Start with question 1,
Question 1 would be,
and then let's do question 1. Yeah, I agree.
and then go, that works. Yeah, that's totally.
To answer question 1.
Can I do one more thing, President? We invited Mark to come tonight. So Mark, if you want to come to the microphone, he was gracious enough. So Mark is our Director of Transportation. He's obviously been very involved in what we're doing internally, and him and Carrie have been very hands-on with the electric vehicle information. They've gone to the schools, they've gone to do demos, they've talked to the sales rep. So he was ready and willing to come tonight, so I asked if he'd come and just be part of the discussion. Feel free to ask the questions, or Mark, obviously, if you have any information. You're not known for being shy, so I'm sure you can chime in anyway, but feel free to jump in at any point as well.
Could you guys review what question 1 is?
Yes. I think what we want to get to at some point is whether or not on the ballot, do you want to have a electric vehicle bus proposition? That would be the first choice. If you're saying that.
Right. So question 1 is, I'm sorry.
No, you're right, electric vehicle on the bus proposition.
Do you want to buy an electric bus? Yes or no?
There you go.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, that's the question.
That's a separate question from where you go with this budget.
We can get into all the alternatives, but I think it might be prudent to deal with this question first.
Yes, so put the budget one aside for now.
Jim, let me jump in for 2
separate
seconds, because I remember, so Lauren, and I, thinking back, I don't know that the municipal training actually went over this quite clearly. So the budget, or at least in our case, so the budget is its own vote on this budget. The bus proposition is also its own vote on this. What those buses look like, if they're clown cars or if they're limousines, is its own thing. Did I get that right? Today?
Yeah.
Okay, just stay in like the newbie, because I remember the feeling of not.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
And
thank
then
you.
And thank you for being here and letting Jim put you on the hot seat. We
Well,
noticed
hot
that.
seat. It's a very cold seat. Jess.
I was gonna say, to answer that question, I was hoping to ask a couple of questions. First is, are you there's a bunch, so we can, go back and forth, but first is, are you aware of any local districts that have purchased electric buses? I'll ask you a couple of them and then you can answer them together if you want. Two, how is it working with them as far as like the usability of the buses, the things they've learned from those buses, costs, and then I think after that, and ultimately, maybe there's some in between, but if the answer to both of those, well, the first one is yes, you've been to other districts, and once you have seen, been educated as to how it's going there, what your ultimate recommendation to the board would be about whether or not we should purchase them right now. Because given, which is my understanding, that this will be potentially the last year that we will get funding for an electric bus. Potentially.
Above it, separate from regular bus.
Strictly incentives for electric busing is what I'm talking about. So can we start with those?
Exactly, yeah, so.
Remember rule one, don't mention any district by name.
So yes, there is some districts that have already purchased the buses. Locally, yes. They have not had a very good experience with the purchase of the buses or the buses in general. For most districts, they're off the road or in the shop more than they're on the road.
These are just electric buses?
Just electric buses, yes. They've had a lot of electrical issues with them, a lot of charging issues with them. The dealers, there's only 3 major dealers that produce the electric bus or school buses in New York State. So it doesn't matter which company you pick, they've all had, a lot of issues with these buses. The first district that I know that purchased them, there was multiple issues with software, a lot of things I guess they just didn't expect. People have this myth out there that it's going to be cheaper to have an electric bus. It's not. Maintenance, in my opinion, is going to be more expensive. These buses are known to burn through tires twice as fast. They're a bigger tire, which is more expensive. The battery, first of all, the warranty on a diesel bus that we would purchase would have a 10-year, 150,000-mile warranty. So the bus is paid off in 5 years. For the next 5 years, that bus is still under warranty. We hardly ever put any money into these buses except for basic maintenance. They're covered for the life of the bus. The electric buses, because they're so unsure of them, you get a 1-year bumper to bumper. Then after that, you get 8 years on the batteries. But the batteries, what they don't tell you is you have 100% charge on the battery. Once that bus gets to a 20% charge, the bus starts to derate no matter where it is, it turns things off. So you really only have an 80% charge on the battery, not 100%. What they figure is the batteries at most may last 7 years. And just like your cell phone, over that time, the batteries get less and less and less and less and less. So by year 7, they're estimating you'll need to replace those batteries on those buses. The bus that we are choosing to buy, which is a 3 battery pack bus, which still would not make one of our routes without charging midday. This is the largest capacity of batteries you can get with a school bus.
This is what's available on the market, you're
Yes.
saying largest, okay.
Most companies have 2 batteries. International has the largest with 3 batteries, which has a longer distance, which we would need to even try to complete a run. Those battery packs are $65,000 a piece. So to replace, you can't replace 1, you have to replace 3 every time.
So it's that times 3.
That times 3
Okay.
for a replacement when they go bad. So they give you an 8-year warranty. I asked the manufacturers over and over again, what is that, what is the warranty? Like, does that mean if the batteries start getting weak, we replace them? Well, that's not the case. The only way they would replace them under warranty would be if there's a major defect. They start on fire, the cell goes bad, the battery won't take a charge, or there is some code that the bus puts out that would tell them. With the electric buses, everything has to be done with a case file. So if a battery was to go bad, that bus could sit for months and months and months before we even had any call on whether they replace it or not.
So it's, sorry, this is different from the 1-year warranty, this is the 8-year warranty, or how long?
The
is
batteries are an 8-year warranty,
Batteries are 8 bucks.
is what they're telling you. The bus in general gets a 1-year bumper to bumper.
And what is it for a regular bus, a non-electric bus?
Non-electric bus would be 10-year,
10-year
150,000.
bumper to bumper.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not bumper to bumper, but all powertrain. So your motor, any major component, transmission, all that.
But on the electric alternative, that's all included only in the 1 year.
They get the 1-year bumper to bumper, then you'll get a 5-year, what they call a motor, like a drive, it's their drivetrain, there's electric motors that run off the batteries. You only get a 5-year on them.
Are the districts that have the buses using these buses?
Yes.
Okay, in every day, so there's, so I guess what, because one of the topics at one point was, like, I think you mentioned it just here, for our routes, because we are a fairly large district, we would have to charge in the middle of the day. So there's not a bus that can go one full day without a charge.
I mean, if you put it on a very small run, most of our runs, from our studies that we've done, we know that most of our runs are over 50 miles in the morning, 50 miles in the afternoon. You're pushing it to be able to do it without charging it. You might not make it back depending on where you are.
And is there enough time in the middle of the day to charge it?
There is time, but the problem there is
School.
you'd have to charge it with a fast charger and optimal, they call it prime rate. So some districts that have done the study say that it would cost over $100 more a month per bus. If you were to run an electric bus, it would cost $100 more a month to charge it than it would to run a diesel bus the same distance and fuel it.
So, my ultimate question. What do you recommend?
My recommendation would be not to purchase one.
Right.
For the other reason I say that is because if we choose to purchase an electric bus, we're giving up one diesel bus, which we have a rollover plan, which we try to keep intact.
Yeah, what is the cycle for a regular?
10 years.
Okay. And
So
best case
we
scenario.
try to turn the
would
buses
be-
over every 10 years. That's why we get a 10-year warranty, 150,000 mile. So we hardly put anything into the buses. By the time we turn them over, the warranties are just running out. So they're fully covered the entire time we own them. The other issue with the electric buses is every time something goes wrong with these, which from other districts we know happens a lot, they have to be towed. We can't work on them. Our mechanics have no knowledge of how to work on these buses. They have to be retrained. We don't have the tools to work on them, and there's a lot of things you can't touch on them because of high voltage. So every time they have to go back to the dealer, unfortunately, they have to be towed. And every time you make a tow, it's $800 to $1,000 from here to Saratoga.
And so if we bought one of these buses this year, is it instead of a gas bus?
Well, so I'll hop in on this one, because I've been working with our bond counsel, on the wording of the resolutions, because there's different ways you can word the resolutions, and what we've been talking about, if you did a separate proposition like Prop B for like purchase of the electric bus, you can word the other one, say, we'll buy five buses and the electric bus, or if B fails, we can buy a 6th bus. So there's ways you can work it where you can still try to stay on your plan. If we did all one, I guess we could do something too. So like there's ways you can word the resolution so we don't miss out on that 6th bus. Because we were thinking 5 diesel, 1 electric, or 6 diesel. So we don't want to lose that one bus because we didn't buy 2 buses last year. So there's different ways you can just word the proposition that goes out to the voters to kind of put safety nets in there.
And that's part of the guidance you're seeking tonight, is that that's something you want to do. 6 altogether or 5 in 1.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
My fear would be that if they go on a prop together, and people don't want the electric bus, we're gonna lose all the buses. And that's gonna put me in a real deficit with buses, especially right now, when you look at the manufacturing of these buses. We purchased 9 small buses last year. We still don't have 6 of them. We won't even see them until July. That's how far back we're waiting for buses to be processed. So if we lose these, to try to get them back, we'll be waiting another year.
I would like to point something out. First thing is that there was mention that the other bus or the electric bus would not cost us anything. But I don't know that that's really an accurate statement considering we don't have mechanical trained, correct? We don't have a driver trained, correct? That's my time.
Yeah, we're just gonna be.
I can turn it off.
No, you're good, you're good.
No, I'm gonna leave this on.
So there is an increase in insurance, there's an infrastructure that would be increased, right? Like, I mean, we don't have a charging station. I guess my point is, it's not just about the bus. There's multi-layers and levels that we really have to consider all costs. It's not just the price of a bus, correct? I mean, I want that to be very clear with the public, like, it's not like we're just gonna say, this bus isn't gonna cost us anything. It's not true, like, we still have training, on multiple levels, insurance, they cannot be stored in our garage.
Just sticking with the
Can they
cost.
be stored in our garage?
Sticking with the cost, because you had information on that note was with the actual cost of just the bus and not any of the infrastructure, correct?
Right, so the charger that goes this bus is just under $30,000, $29,967 is how much the charger costs. As part of that the NICE program, there's also funds for chargers. So right now, we qualify for $25,000 of that charger. When we get our electrification plan complete, that bumps us up to $55,000. So we could cover the cost of the charger and some of the installation costs that go with it. That's covered under that. My thought is we wait till we get our electrification plan finished from NYSERDA and our consultants before we submit for the funding for the charger, so we have it all covered instead of leaving a balance to be paid with local funds. But so that can also be covered under. So you have bus funding and charger funding that's under this program.
Okay, so then we would just have training costs associated? Can the bus be stored in our garage without the buses?
That's where it have to be.
Right, I spoke to Utica National, our insurance company, and they say right now they don't have any problem with buses being stored inside garages.
The weight of the bus and our roll bridges, weight capacity,
The
is
weight's
that a
about
concern?
between 5,000 and 8,000 pounds heavier. I mean, it could be a concern, but I mean, we have fire trucks and stuff that do go across the same bridges, and I don't think that's a major concern, but they are a lot heavier. I mean, New York State, we have 45,000 buses on the road. Right now, in the entire state, there's 118 electric buses total that are on the road. And they haven't been on the road that long to even know what's gonna happen with them. So we don't have a lot to go on. When you ask any questions, there's so many questions, but there's no answers.
Right.
That's the issue, And people that are buying them, jumping on and just getting them because they feel like they're forced to get them or wishing they had it. I mean, I've talked to every other district in Rensselaer County, and I know there are a couple putting them up, but it's not because they want to, it's because they feel like they're being forced to. Nobody is willing or wants to buy buses. The dealers are kind of being forced at the same cost to try to sell one. They have to sell one for every 11 diesels they'll allow them to send. In 30 days, they're trying to get a resolution passed to lift that, but the governor has forced onto them too. Trying to get that lifted, but.
Yeah, to be clear, it's not feels like it is. It is a mandate from the state of New York. So
Yeah.
the whole thing is giving me agita. It's not a feel like they're being forced. They are being forced, as we are.
So are you pretty informed on this? It seems like if the bus was free, you wouldn't want it.
Pretty much, yes.
So what would we have to pay you to take a bus? I'm trying to quantify where you are.
I guess where we stand right now financially, and to bring a bus on with everything else we have to be concerned with in that garage, it just seems like another headache we're bringing on for what we're basically buying something that we know won't give us what we need. And we're giving up something that will at this point in time.
So essentially, in order to take this bus, you want a duplicate bus that you could really use, a diesel bus, and you'd want some team to take care of this bus so it doesn't detrimentally impact your existing team.
Well, I mean, we could take care of it, I'm just saying that there's not much that we can actually do, because we're not trained to work on these things. So anything that goes wrong with it, it's gonna be a matter of the dealer having to deal with it.
Trying to get my arms around when you say it's just another headache.
And really, the
What would it
dealers
take
right
to get
now-
the headache to go away?
The dealers only have, each dealership has maybe one, if two, people that are actually qualified to work on it. So when they go to the dealer, you're gonna be waiting forever to even get it back. Like I said, we've known other districts that have gotten these buses months and months ago, and they still have not even been on the road yet. You know, just from a lot of multiple issues, not just one singular thing. But like I said, there's a lot of questions and there's no answers.
I appreciate your candor and the informed opinion that you bring.
Let's start with the first question I have, like from my own like recent experience with an electric vehicle, like learning that the efficacy of like how many miles you can go in battery life is diminished when it's cold, like when you have to run heat, right? So, and the experience I had was it's pretty significant as well, like how much that diminishes. So when I hear you say like
Cold weather and terrain is very significant. They know that in the wintertime, these go far less than they would on a nice day in the summer. It dramatically cuts. So when they do these studies, they don't even rate it at 100%. They automatically bring it rate to 60% because of those factors when they're determining how far they'll make it. And we have all those things. We have the cold temperatures, we have the terrain, and we have just distance.
yeah, so yeah, when learning that, I'm like, well, that's an inconvenient thing when you're living in upstate New York where that's bound to happen a fair amount of time. So I wanted to make sure that was also true and accurate to us. And again, like bringing up that I am new to the board, and so I'm still trying to catch up with all everything. So I'm like nervous to ask anything that's gonna kick a hornet's nest for previous discussions right now. But I understand, to my colleague's point last time, of like, there's only a limited amount, we are increasingly looking like we're in a position that we have to move to some electric vehicles, and I understand like my colleague's point last time of like, if we're gonna have to do this, like, our opportunity to get supportive funding might be dwindling. I think that that's like an important point. And folks explained to me last board meeting that there's been a little bit of a like playing chicken with the governor of like kind of saying like, oh, is she gonna realize that this is not sustainable or that these are the problems? But a question I didn't ask, and I'm sorry ahead of time if this is kicking the hornet's nest, but like, I understand we're discussing this because we're like, should we be doing this before that funding money runs out? But I don't think I understand what happens if we get to that deadline and our district and others are like, well, we couldn't make it happen from finances. What are the repercussions of that, I guess? I don't know.
That's a good question. There's issue with funding and financing, right?
That was an okay thing for me to ask.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
They haven't gotten that far yet, but my guess is it'll be some kind of like a repercussion, if anything, down the road. But I don't know that for a fact. But just how you look at things, how they've done things with the mascot and other things like that, it's always that, you didn't go towards the mandate, so,
Right.
this will happen. But I don't know if they would enforce
They haven't laid
anything.
it out yet.
They haven't laid it out. I don't know if they'd enforce anything, if anyone get, what would truly happen. That's my only thought, and how you, from a state perspective, how you could enforce it. Like
Right.
Other than money, I'm not sure what you would do, so.
Even, I don't think there's any way we would ever make the mandate regardless. It's impossible. If we started
that
this
seems
year,
to be
you'd have to
what
buy
most
8
districts-
buses a year. Well, we couldn't do it. Right now, we have a fleet of 75. If you were to go totally electric, we would need a lot more buses to be even to consider. We wouldn't be able to do half days, we wouldn't be able to do after school. You can't do anything unless you had a larger fleet.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about
So
that.
money wise, that would be 8 or 10 buses a year. I mean, at $500,000 a piece. I mean, just think of what that would cost.
Right.
I highly doubt that would ever pass on a vote.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to understand, because we're like weighing like costs and measures, and to me, like the consequences of not complying with this is like part of the risks, I guess, to be assessing. And so thank you for helping me understand that.
More questions. So of the districts that have the buses, how many of them have similar terrains to ours? Because I think I'm not super strong in geography, but some districts have a lot more flatter, dense
Yes.
populations. And like, I don't know, I kind of envision these fitting best maybe in a true city context, because that's where the pollution issue came from, right? Like,
I just want to jump in for a second, because I don't want to put Mark too much on the spot, because you're ours, right? Like, you're our guy, and you have good relationships around the capital district. But I don't want to put him on the spot for what's going on in like Buffalo, or, I'm not supposed to, or in Western New York, in Central New York.
That's not what I asked, though.
No, I'm not gonna give.
Right, so I would like, if you're saying how many have children like ours.
Locally, that have used these buses.
I know, but like, I mean, I was reading, I totally understand. But, I was reading about an experience in Hopkins County that was like not as bad as what we heard from Chad. It's not, they're not like jumping over the moon, but it's not, so I just don't wanna put Mark, all I'm saying is I don't wanna put Mark on the spot for too much.
If you don't feel comfortable answering the question, you don't have to answer it. But if you feel comfortable, I would love to know your opinion.
Yeah, so most of the districts that I know of don't have quite the terrain that we have. They're more flat.
And is that significant when deciding whether or not, can you explain why?
Well, just the more terrain, the hills, pulling the hills, the elevation, the colder temperatures. Yeah.
I think we mentioned this before, but.
But we also, in our district, you have to remember too, most of Nassau and those, they're not even paved roads. We have a lot of dirt roads. And if you've ever driven on half these roads, when the roads start working in the spring and the fall, the buses, you're floored trying to just make it through some of these areas because the roads are so soft. Now, you add 5,000 to 8,000 more pounds to those buses, that's also an issue too. So they're working twice as hard to get through the terrain that we have here.
I think you said this in the beginning, but it's hard, we learn all the information to remember it all the first time, at least for me, to remember it all the first time or somebody said it. What is the training available now? Like, I guess I have no concept of how different it is to drive an electric bus than a regular bus, and who provides that training?
The dealerships will provide training to our drivers.
The dealerships?
Yes.
Okay, so there's no state-run program for these trainings despite the state
They will
mandate?
train you how to drive, but it's not like they can, mechanics will need a lot more training to be able to even work on. They know nothing about these buses at all, zero.
Okay. I hope you don't feel like I really appreciate this because honestly,
For
I
most
think these are all my fears, so
But from talking to most districts that have happened to drivers, they call it driver anxiety. So you get some drivers that just are afraid or they don't understand, but once they see the battery, they get very nervous when they're driving if the battery's not. So there's all sorts of things that go along with it that, some drivers after they learn to drive them, they like them. But,
So I guess then for me, since this is our gym, thank you. I'll say one more thing and then I'll stop talking. So I guess I completely understand, and Lauren, I'm happy you raised that point about, it's not just that we're worried about losing the extra funding, it's also we're worried about complying with the state mandate. I love green energy. I work in green energy, I think green energy is great. I love the idea with like the pollution and the kids are standing outside, especially in the more dense areas, but I love our kids more, and I'm just not convinced that right now it makes sense for us to have an electric bus. So I am personally not for putting an electric bus up right now. Thank you, and thank you very much.
I just want to make sure that, so Adam, Megan, Jess.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, because I know we're still waiting on the full NYSERDA report. Is that accurate? Okay. So when we went for the advocacy day, Michelle and I and Sam were at the Capitol to talk about all of the things related to funding issues, and we did talk about the electric bus mandate. One of the assembly persons that we met with, this is a big issue for that person, but but they weren't receptive to listening to us because what they said was that basically that any of the pushback was rumor-based, because they hadn't been able to obtain any complete NYSERDA reports. And so I'm keeping an eye out for our full report, so that we can educate them. I appreciate you noting the increase in the number of buses we would have to have, because I do recall a prior conversation that we had where we would have to basically replace the fleet 1.5 times to be able to have enough actual vehicles to meet the mandate and meet our need. So thank you for confirming that.
A bigger problem would be a half day or an emergency, go home, like we have a snowstorm. The bus wouldn't charge enough to get the kids home again.
And then also related to sports transportation or any extracurriculars.
We couldn't use them for sports at all.
We couldn't use them for sports transportation or anything like that. And then I know the fact that we wouldn't be incurring any immediate cost to set up with one, like that we could get reimbursed basically 100% to potentially end up with a really heavy, gigantic paperweight, concerns me. But if we didn't have to have a public community outlay for that, I would be okay. I'm not okay. I don't want to say okay. I would be closer to it because the public wouldn't have to foot the bill for this experiment, basically. I'm going somewhere with this, just give me a second. There's just so many challenges that we've run into. Where I have concerns is when the state comes at us with these mandates, and we've had this happen a couple of times with other issues since I've been here. And, you know, we do the advocacy and we push back and we appeal and we do all of the things. And at the end of the day, the state says, do it or else. And the ramifications of the or else are really awful. It's, you know, it's a bad or a worse choice. And we keep finding ourselves in these positions because, you know, we can continue to advocate. But if she's not gonna budge, she's not gonna budge. So I don't see that we necessarily have a choice. I don't see that we necessarily have a choice in the one vehicle situation. I just don't like the idea of how does it impact you if we were to put it on and then we're not getting one diesel bus because we're potentially replacing it with an electric bus. If that electric bus is not usable for any reason, how does that impact you if you're down one bus? Can you talk about the impacts of being down a bus?
I mean, if I had to buy 5 rather than 6?
Yeah.
Well, it affects our replacement plan. Obviously, we're down one. That means we're going to keep another diesel bus that's already 10 years old. So now that runs out of warranty, and that's when you get the major expenses associated with all the emissions and all the things that go along with it. That costs a lot of money. Right now, they're under warranty. Once that runs out, it creates a lot of expense for us.
And you were talking